I'm James.
Okay, Molly, we're live.
I'm president of the
Wonderful.
Salt Lake Education Association.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And then we have some other instructors here.
Yes, I'm Mike Harmon. I'm the District Homeless Education Liaison, and I'm the Vice President of the Education Association.
Excellent, excellent.
I'm Amanda Sutton, first, second grade.
Okay, very good.
I'm Valerie Gates. I'm the executive coordinator.
Okay.
Association and teacher at high school.
Okay, very good.
And I'm Rebecca Bailey, and I'm
Okay, very good.
All right. Hi, Dr. Gonzalez. How are you?
I'm well, Molly. How are you?
Good. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just so you know, we've got about 45 minutes. We have 7 questions this go around.
Same,
For those that
keep
are,
that up.
and for those of
Okay.
us that are watching and those that I can't see, my name is Molly Swartzoff. I'm the Senior Vice President with Rain Associates. I'm helping facilitate the search with the President, Mr. Michael Collins. And so I'm going to go ahead and let Dr. Gonzalez introduce herself for about 5 minutes or so. And then we have about 40 minutes to get through 7 questions. So I will give you just kind of a nod, Dr. Gonzalez, when we're about a halfway point, if that's okay.
Okay, that'll be good.
Wonderful.
Well, hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and it's definitely an honor to be one of the finalists in your search for a superintendent. As you probably read in my bio, you know I'm from Virginia, and the schools that I went to, James Madison and the George Washington University. But what you don't know is some of my experiences that I had along the way. So I started my teaching career in Rockingham County as a Spanish teacher, and I started the AP program there. Collectively, I have 14 years in the classroom, and I'm very proud of that. I wanted to make sure that I stay in the classroom for a while. And so when I had to move to the Richmond area, to Meadowbrook High School was my alma mater, and I taught for another 9 years there. So again, collectively 14 years. Of those 9 years, 6 years, I was the department chair there of the world languages and the L program. At the time it was called ESL. And so I was at the school that had a lot of diversity. It had changed a lot since I attended. And I had the opportunity to work with teachers who taught me as colleagues, but also to be part of introducing the IB program at Meadowbrook High School. And it was wonderful because we had it in 2 schools in Chesterfield. And this was our most diverse school. So it was really exciting to be a part of that and to have our students of different backgrounds and languages and cultures to be able to, what we call, take a swing at that. So we allow them to attend our classes, regardless if they're working towards that IB diploma. We felt like it was important that they have that level of rigor. We also worked extensively to help provide, we became an ESOL center. And so more and more families in our community moved there to be a part of that. It was a majority minority school. And so I feel like I have a lot of experience in working with that diversity. Just to give you a quick example, we developed the native Spanish speaker class to help our children with their literacy in their own language and to make the connection to the English language, and to also open the door for opportunities to be able to take the AP classwork or the IB class where they're able to sit in on those classes. Also from there, I then transitioned to a school improvement role. I was being tapped to do some more things in a leadership capacity. And then finally, I left the classroom to be the school improvement coach and to do some really big initiatives there with grading practices and remediation time built in the school day, because our population was not one that staying after school was an option. You know, they had home responsibilities and jobs. So we built that in, and then we looked at our grading practices. So from there, I then transitioned, was working on my master's degree, and transitioned to a more formalized leadership position as a dean of students at a technical center. So I have the CTE background and experience and what that can do for our children to prepare them not only for college, but also for the career track. From there, I went to an alternative high school with a very diverse population as well. Chesterfield County overall is very diverse in and of itself. So at the tech center, it was diverse. And then also at the alternative high school, you had your most fragile children who had a hard time at their home schools to deal with their trauma and their social emotional baggage that comes with them, and also didn't see the value in education for the most part. So it was great from going from one extreme to work with IB AP kids, but then to now work with really the most vulnerable children at the high school level, and to get them graduated with a skill set that would be of value to them as they moved on in life. From there, I moved on to central office position in Williamsburg, where I worked as the coordinator of accountability and assessment, because along the way, as I was doing school improvement, data really became my thing, you know, data informing our decisions and really peeling back the layers to look at our children and to see why they're not being successful, to close that achievement gap. So at Meadowbrook and then at Community, we were able to close some of those achievement gaps. And then, so then I went on and did it at a district level. And then I worked with other school improvement coaches and worked on the data and being in charge of all the state assessments. From there, I was invited to move along with my superintendent at the time. We became a superintendent, or he was my director and then became superintendent. Went with him to Charles City. It was also a majority minority school division, even though it was smaller and it was more rural than my other experiences at the time. But the beauty of that was I'd been a teacher for 14 years. I've been an administrator now for 14 years. But then in Charles City, I got to wear multiple hats and do all the jobs, because where there are less people, there's more jobs that each of us wear, right? At each job that we do. So I was able to really get down to the nut and bolts, to really understand the processes and to really be a part at the ground level of the work in instruction and to really help facilitate that forward. And we did a one-to-one rollout at that point before it was cool, you know, during the pandemic. We were ahead of the curve there to do that. And then I was fortunate enough to move on to the superintendency in Page County, which is not as diverse. It's probably my least diverse job opportunity I've had, but I do have the pleasure of serving nonetheless. We have diversity in our social economics and just in navigating this pandemic and being able to do some good things there to help bring some equity and some wonderful experiences for our children there. And rolling out the one-to-one there, but during a pandemic. So had both experiences. And so now as I was looking at, you know, for other experiences, I just want you to know that I have two wonderful reasons here in Utah. I have two children that live here and two grandbabies right down the road in West Jordan, are my grandbabies. So it was wonderful to be there. But the reason I'm also interested in Salt Lake, also to be closer to some grandchildren, but also the diversity that it offers here. When I was looking at the opportunity that presented itself, I saw all the diversity and it just warmed my heart, because that's where my roots are. My family's diverse. And so I just thought, what a great opportunity. Perhaps my skill set will complement what they're looking for. And the bonus is I get to be near some grandchildren as well. So it's my pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Dr. Gonzalez. All right, we're going to jump right into the questions. And like I said, I'll let you know when we're about halfway through, just so that we can kind of adjust the time if we need to. The first question is, please share your understanding of shared governance in Salt Lake City School District. What do you see as potential strengths and weaknesses in this process? And please describe past experiences you have had with collective decision making.
With which decision making? Molly, what was that last piece?
Collective decision making.
Okay. All right. Well, let me address that twofold. First of all, I am amazed at the shared governance at Salt Lake City and the way that with the site-based management that you have here with your community councils at your schools, that's just amazing. Not a lot of divisions do it that way, I'm just saying. So that's something to be applauded, that you really have ownership at the ground level where all the instruction happens. To me, that's the nucleus where the action happens, is in the classroom. And to be able to have the community and the school leadership and the teachers to be a part of that is just something to be applauded. So that, and then also share governance and having a good working relationship with the school board to set the policies and to set the direction. It's like I say, it's like navigating a boat. They're steering it. They're telling us which direction to go in, right? They're telling us the what and for whom and at what cost. And then we're the hows. How do we implement that? And so I think that's something to be applauded here, something that I want to continue here to be able to support. I look at the role at central office is to get the resources and to help take away the barriers that are out there, understanding at the same time that you still need an aligned system as a division. You have to have some alignment, but without squashing the innovation and creativity that happens at the school level. It's kind of like, you know, what are the loose elements and what are the tight elements? Like you have to have a curriculum that everyone's following, but then how you develop and how you roll that out should be left to the creativity of the teachers and the school. And then you have to have that piece of accountability at the district level so we can, you know, measure, and we have those metrics. It's the game by which we play, the rules by which we play. We have to have the metrics. But how they get there is where you have that innovation and that creativity and that flexibility at the school level. So really, so that reflects back onto my leadership style, which is very much servant leadership. What is it we need to do to get you the resources in the hands of the teachers in the school level and for the administrators to help their schools be successful? What are the barriers? What can we do as servant leaders to mitigate that or get that out of the way? And then also when you talk about decision making, even though I was in the classroom for 14 years, at this point, it's been 14 years ago, right? So I have to be cognizant of the fact of those who are in the work now and what that looks like. I was teasing the school administrators this morning that, you know, we all got to be new people, new teachers again this year, because who's ever done this in a pandemic before, even as leaders? So it's even more important that we hear from what I consider the frontline workers of education of what's working and not what's not working. I'm also, my leadership style is one of collaboration. I work closely with my cabinet, with my school leadership teams to understand what's going on and what their needs are, what can we do collectively, and what do we need to do individually in order to help people move forward. And so when you do that, I'm a big believer too in having all the right people around the table at the same time. I don't want to have multiple meetings with multiple groups. I say bring the players together. And it's also about, there will be times when tough decisions have to be made. There are going to be times, there are today, there will be forevermore. We're not all going to agree on everything. But I feel like if we are faithful in our execution of how we get to that point, did we look at the data? Did the data inform our decision? Did we take into account the pros and the cons? Did we look at who's going to be impacted and who's going to be marginalized? Because you don't want that. You want to make sure you've considered all the components, but you have to have people at the table to do that. And at the end of the day, then we have to have a consensus. But then, like I've been telling the other groups today, I want diversity in discussion, but then there's got to be unity in the decision. Unity when we walk out that door, that we're all going to play on the same team, Team Salt Lake, that we're all in it together for the good learning of all students. And I know sometimes it's easy to get caught up in just the, you know, the pet projects we have going on and everything, but we have to think about, we're about all children in Salt Lake, so we need to look at it through that lens. With the shared perspective that other people and players come to the table with, we need to be able to step back and know it's okay to have that diverse conversation. It's okay to have difference of opinions. But at the end of the day, what's good for students? What's educationally sound? What's fiscally responsible and sustainable? And then that's how we move forward with all our decisions.
Second question for you. What do you feel is the role of teachers' associations, and what familiarity do you have with unions? What has your experience been like working with education associations in previous districts?
Okay. Well, Virginia does not have unions, so I'll just tell you that right now, but we do have very strong education associations. And what I feel like helps is when you have their perspective at the table, you don't discount them, you have them as one of the partners. It's all about partnerships. Most recently, in my current position as superintendent, I work closely with the education president. And what all I ask her to do is, I can't fix what I don't know about. Before you go public or complain, all I ask is that we have a chance to sit down and talk. Just make sure I'm informed. And then I'll go out and visit with her. We'll talk back and forth. Of course, the pandemic kind of changed that whole dynamic of the communication. But just to work collectively and to hear her side of it. And what I appreciated is I also asked her, I said, there's no need for people to be upset. Just come ask the question. Knowledge is power. And I feel like the more that we're transparent and we tell people why, and we tell them, well, this is the how come we had to start and move the calendar to this date, and this is why we had this many days, and this, that. Once people understand it, even if they're not totally in 100% agreement with it, they understand it, they can accept it. But when they just, it's handed down, like top down and handed down, and they don't understand it, then that's where the heartache begins. And so in each of the divisions I've been in, I've been able to have those conversations, more so at central office roles, and then with our staff when I was in school roles and the elements they played. So really, it's the same sheet of music. It's about including them in the discussion and hearing them and letting them have a voice. And also, I found it was twofold. I appreciated my relationship, and I appreciate my current one with them because I'm able to get the word back out, and then they're able to disperse and get the word back out. And then I always made sure that they were part of my employee advisory committee. I'm sorry, I got ready to call it EACS because that's the acronym. But I made sure that they had a seat at the table because I felt like they're representing a larger group of teachers who can't participate right now. So making sure that she was there on the times that she couldn't be there, we sent the minutes to her to make sure that her group was still very well informed and the teachers were very well informed. So that's how I would proceed to go forward. I understand you all have a really strong association here. I've been reading up on it and everything, but I think that's wonderful. I think that's to be applauded because we all want the same things. At the end of the day, it's about student achievement and it's about what's best for students. And as long as we all can agree to that, then I feel like we can work out the rest of it. It's just about understanding the parameters and it's all about compromise and it's all about given what we're given, what's the best outcome we can come up with to make everybody happy, or at least somewhat happy at the end of the day to still help us achieve our goals.
Thank you. And the third question. There is a shortage of substitutes, making it difficult or impossible for teachers to stay home when they are sick. Increasing the daily rate for substituting could improve the situation. What other solutions would you propose?
Yeah. Wow. See, it's so nice to know we're all in the same boat. You know, there is something to be said about collective misery, right? We're all in the same boat. And it has gotten harder to have that where, you know, how do you compensate people? To think outside the box. I mean, you know, I love thinking outside the box, and sometimes that's what you have to do when money is a factor and human capital is not available. So we have had to combine some teaching positions for teachers who were willing, who wanted to pick up some more sections, and we had to divvy up some things like that to help them cover and reward teachers that way. Definitely increasing the pay helps. It's a little bit harder, guys, I'll have to say, during a pandemic because you got the health component. You know, you might have people who are willing to be a substitute, but not necessarily during a pandemic. And so you have to look at that. So you also have to look creatively. In one school I was at, we looked at having a substitute that was always on call at that school. So at least for the last minute illnesses and sicknesses, we were able to have that person float around. And when we didn't need them as a sub, then they were able to just float and kind of serve as a para. At our schools now in the district I'm in now, I mean, you have to be creative, okay, guys? So, you know, so we take our encore teachers at the elementary school, the resource teachers, and when they don't have a full schedule, because definitely with the pandemic, and then even last year trying to change it around, when they didn't have a full schedule, they became the internal subs as well. So we always told our administrators, go to them first to help save, because the last thing we wanted to do was pull teachers, you know, just to pull and say, you know, hey, surprise, you have to cover a class today. That's very stressful for teachers. So we wanted to make sure that we could handle that. And that's actually worked really well for us right now. It works better at some schools where we have a few more resource teachers with a few more openings throughout the pockets, and you're able to kind of piecemeal it together. But definitely having those, and at the one school I was at where we had the built-in substitute, that helped. But at the end of the day, it does come down to money, I would say, and also just building the relationships. I think it comes down to the training. I know with some of our substitutes, one of them, you know, was speaking to me one time and sharing out that, you know, the children aren't like they used to be, you know, da. So that made me realize, wow, we really need to take the time to train up our subs just as much as we do our teachers, because they too need the skill sets. And some of these were retired folks who had been in the education world, but education's changed a lot. Our dynamics, our relationships with our students have changed. And so this was a way that, you know, to build up their skill set. We just assume the warm bodies in the class. No, you need more than that. You still need those relationships, because children behave better for people they have relationships with. So again, having the sub who's a part of the building, part of the culture, training them up with the skill sets they need to be successful, really spending more time in training them up, but also being creative with your in-house, rewarding those who want to pick it up, and then changing around the schedule for those with free schedules become your in-house subs. But of course, some more money along the way is always helpful.
Thank you. And the fourth question, describe an example of your work as an administrator for substantive improvement of teacher experience. I cannot speak today, I apologize.
I would have to say that I have a lot of different experiences. I think collectively, if I was to say if it was any one thing, I would say that it's the professional development that's focused has been the basic success. It's not about, you know how it's like the buffet where it's just, you know, here and there and everybody gets a little bit of something, but it never really gets to any depth. It's like staying focused on what it's about and taken it to a deeper level so it really becomes part of the culture. It's not, it's that thing in education where it's like, oh, the one and done. Well, if we just wait this one initiative out, it will surely pass us by, right? And so then it's about staying focused and making sure that it, one, fed into the strategic plan and the school improvement plan, but also had some depth. And so when I became a central office administrator, one thing I made sure I did is I participated in the professional development. I felt like that I needed to be there to learn. If I was going to require of them, it was some new reading program or some new strategy or pedagogy, that I needed to be a part of that to understand it, because I also needed to assess it. Wow, is that working or is that not working? And then the other piece to that is when you put the pieces that make sense. So let me give you an example. When this is a little prior to formalized leadership, but it was when I was the school improvement coach. We were doing 3 big initiatives at once. Well, you don't do 3 big initiatives at once, okay? I realize that, okay? But in this case, in the school setting and the clientele and the situations we were in with the achievement gaps and student achievement and graduation rates, it was almost like you couldn't do one without the other. So we built in that SDS time, the self-directed study time, along with the grading practice, along with the PLC, because we had to get vertical alignment and horizontal alignment across the content area. So we had to get that alignment in place, but then we had to work on our grading practices. And again, it was too easy for our kids to say, nope, I'll take the 0, just give me the 0. And we're like, no, that's not okay. And then you had to have the piece with, well, how do you build in time to work with them? Because our teachers were more than willing to work with the students, but how do you build that in, and how do you get the students to stay after school? So when you put all that together, my biggest naysayer at the end, and what I had to do was really be the cheerleader. We've got this, guys. We've got this. Walk this walk. We've got this. And you had to keep reassuring them. And my biggest naysayer, I'll remember it till the day I die, she came up to me at the end of it all and she said, you know what? I see why we had to do it. It all fit together. Thank you for walking us through that journey. And to me, that was like the biggest compliment of all. Like, yes, she sees the light. It's wonderful. But also just to see the transformation in practice, and that we built a communities of practice, and that you really start looking at the student learning problem and looking at the problem of practice and analyze it together in the PLCs. And when they started forming common assessments and really sharing their data, and what it did, guys, it evolved into this culture of psychological safety that you heard me talk about earlier this morning, where they could make themselves. It wasn't like a you're better than me. It was more like, wow, you got them to get that concept. What did you do? Share out with me. So it became very safe to share. And by doing that, it grew the staff together and they were all able to blossom. So again, I really feel like it comes down to that professional development, being focused, being prioritized, doing it with depth, being there, walking the walk with them and checking in on them and seeing what doesn't work and what does work, and grab the low hanging fruit, fix the stuff, the easy fixes, fix it. Don't make that an issue. Get that out of the way so that they can get on to the bigger work at hand.
Wonderful. And just so you know, we're about at our halfway point, Dr. Gonzalez.
Okay.
Okay. In our school communities, we have students who have to work, have childcare responsibilities, have language challenges, and have weighty family responsibilities. Our educational system must not be a one-size-fits-all. How would you enable more flexibility in our system to accommodate/consider the specific needs of each of our students, their families, and school communities?
Very good. Is near and dear to my heart because I've actually lived that life. When I was at the alternative school as a school-based administrator, we had to think outside the box because we had all the children. If you consider the 3 tiers of support, this was tier 3, all tier 3 children in one school. And it was from the whole 60,000 kids in Chesterfield County. But it became about think outside the box. You got to fit the regs. You got to get the graduation requirements. You got to do all that. But no one said you had to do it a certain way. So be creative in how you do that. So we had night school. Some kids worked during the day, did the childcare. They came at night school. Then we had some students who and I'm just going to be real with them. We're talking, the kids talk to me. Ms. G, I'm feeling some sort of way. I can't do this. I can't be in the classroom. So before virtual learning was even virtual learning like it is now, you got to remember there's a few years removed. We were allowing kids to do online learning in the lab at the school, and other kids were going to the classroom. Well, guess what? Even that didn't work for some of our children because they had social interaction issues and, just some emotional baggage they were dealing with. So then we allowed some of them, again, this was all before the pandemic kind of models. And so then you let them work from home and then check in. We allowed them to do that until they proved they could not do that. They weren't being successful enough. So then what do you do then? So then I do house visits, go visit them going, guess what, Johnny, this model isn't working so well for you. I kind of need you to come back in. Let us give you that support you need so that you can be successful. So again, I'm open to everything. It's really amazing that question was asked, because I look at your division and see that you have a lot of opportunities for students, and that is okay. And when you look at where we're going forward, normal doesn't exist anymore, because when you think about it and we say what's normal, might not have been a good fit for our children even in the past. We just assumed it fit because it fit our narrative of what normal was, but it doesn't necessarily fit. So when you go forward, why couldn't we still have some virtual academies and do some things? Look at what worked in this model, in the hybrid model or the virtual learning model, what worked when we had the 5-day face-to-face, and allow students that flexibility and that choice to what fits them. Don't make it fit one size all, especially those who have family responsibilities. That's the beauty of even the pandemic now. We know firsthand that we can be flexible and we can do things differently for children. And so when we have a lot of our children right now who had to, because it was a necessity, get day jobs. So we're not even mandating that they do it, secretly. Let's just be real. We have very limited internet support out there as well. So that's part of the problem. But the other part is, let them do it. If they're being successful and want to do it in the evening or do it all on the weekends or whatever, it's okay if you're being successful. Now, for the children who aren't being successful, sometimes that's when we as adults have to step in and go, we have to help you out, Johnny, because you're not being successful. Even if they think they're okay, we have to help them out. And that's our responsibility. So I feel like as long as we have a monitoring system in place to ensure success for our children, who says success all has to look one way? It does not. And I really think we need to keep open minds, and I'm open to all kinds of ideas. I even had the students today ask me about a clever idea, and I thought, wow, that's a really good one. We'll think about that one. That was really good. So bring the ideas forward. Let's think about it through the lens of the child and the life experiences they're going through, and let's make it happen for them. We now know seat time is not a thing we need to worry about, right? That has been proven. So let's think outside the box. Does it have to go 7 to 3, 8 to 4? Does it have to be this context? What ways can we design schooling to look different to meet the needs? And why can't Salt Lake be the leader in that?
Wonderful. And the next question you kind of touched on, so I apologize if you have to repeat yourself a little bit. But the 6th question is, based on our experience with remote learning, what do you see as opportunities for innovation going forward?
Well, one thing I think to go forward is, first of all, keep it, because it did work for some children and it works for some teachers, but change the model up a little bit. Let's get the feedback from everybody. Let's see for whom did it work and who's the rock star at it. Some teachers prefer that mode of teaching, some do not, and that's okay. But let's make it a division-wide virtual choice, and then have teachers who apply to be the virtual teacher and is like the 3rd grade teacher for the whole district and not having to juggle. I think one of the hardest things we've asked our teachers to do this year is have your Zoom children and your in-person children and manage it all at the same time. That's just incredible what we've asked our teachers to do. And I know in one of our schools, we were able to make one teacher school-wide, because it does come down to staffing. So you kind of have to move the numbers around. But if you did surveys and you found out how many would be interested in a virtual learning environment, maybe they need to work all day, maybe the elementary, they want to do that, but then put criteria in place. Do you have internet access? Do you have someone who can support you? Do you have a support system at home? And then what are the metrics that will decide that that's not a good option for you? Again, you have to have criteria in place. Now, unfortunately, with the pandemic, we kind of had to make it available to everybody. But one of the things that I would do differently if I had a chance to redo it is perhaps not give that choice to some families where didn't have all the support systems in place, and we needed to provide more of that support because too many of our children have become marginalized or allowed themselves to become marginalized and kind of stay hidden, even with all our porch visits, and we're trying to re-engage them and everything. So I would say, let's look at that district-wide, but I don't want to have the pressure on the teachers to do both. They just can't. And it really comes down to let people be good at what they're good at. If they're a good online learner, great. And you're a good online teacher, that's what we focus on. In person, let's grow that and really get good at the craft, not the last minute switch where we all had to learn to balance everything and you're kind of you know, a jack of all trades, but not really good at any one thing kind of thing, but really let's specialize in it and incorporate the research-based best practices, because you really have to work at building those relationships too when you do the all virtual, as we've all just experienced, and how that changes our educational experience. But again, it takes time to get the feedback, what worked and what didn't work, and you've got to involve the teachers and the students on what worked and what didn't work, and figure out what we're going to drop and what we're going to keep and how we're going to tweak it as we go forward.
Fantastic. So we have about 15 minutes left. I have one more question that was submitted, and then I do have a couple that were submitted on the Q&A online. So we are going to pull those up as well. But this is question number 7. Describe your education philosophy and approach to your potential superintendency in Salt Lake City School District. Do you see yourself as someone who would steady the ship? Or is there a program/project that may be outside of the box that you would like to explore in Salt Lake City schools?
Okay, very good. Well, first of all, I believe students should have fun learning. I think first and foremost, it's about the instructional core, if you want to know my philosophy. Our job as servant leaders at central office is about protecting that instructional core. And that instructional core is composed of 3 components. It's about building capacity in our teachers, their knowledge and skill sets. It's about increasing our academic content and rigor. All children should have exposure to rigorous coursework. And it's also about engaging our children. Well, it's like I said earlier today, why do they need to know what X is for? How does that apply in real life? And that's the beauty of my experience with tech ed, is that they took the academics and they apply it to real life. And wouldn't that be beautiful if we could do that in all our settings and look at it more as project-based learning, and how do we apply it and make it more interdisciplinary, where math and science, you have to use it to solve real world problems and not just problems in a math book. There's a place for that, building that foundation, that scaffolding, the skill sets. You have to have the basics, but then how do you take it forward to make it more real life? So you have to have those 3 components, and they have to all work together well. And then the rest of it, as you look at the instructional core, we have to provide the supports. You have to have the transportation, the facilities, the administration, the social emotional, the mental health supports, because you have to address all of it so then they can concentrate on the academics. So it's a little hard to say what project or what direction to go in, because this is the one thing I've learned. You need to look at what's already working well in a division. You need to look and listen. You don't come right in and change everything, because even with all my research and my understanding of what's going on here, it's going to take conversations, and it's going to take a deeper understanding. And then you start going, what can we do differently that'll make achievement for students, raise the bar for them? Because even students who are reaching the bar, we need to raise the bar for more for them. We need to peel back the layers and see what are we not doing well. So yes, do I want to explore some other models? But I think there needs to be a deeper assessment of what's already working in place and what the concerns are, because every focus group has a different focus and a different concern, right? So collectively, we need to look at it and see, are the teachers having the same concerns as the administrators? Are the administrators having the same concern as the classifieds? We all have to see what those are and see what we can address. And then moving forward as we develop a strat plan. So my entry plan, even before, if I was selected before July 1st, would already be to be having conversations and meeting with people and getting some information and asking questions. So I walk in with a greater knowledge coming in. And then through that October would be to finish having these conversations, having focus groups, having mixed groups together to have a deeper level of understanding. And then from like October, December to really strategize it and build it out into a strategic plan that really addresses what we're listening to and what we're hearing. And I say we because it's going to be all of us listening together to make sure we're all on the same page, and that we're all then cascading down. If this is the focus and the priorities of the division, because we've all said so, then the schools should be having the improvement plans that focus that down to individual SMART goals that people make themselves and evaluations, and then it all flows back and forth. It should be this ebb and flow where we're all having the freedom to be innovative and creative, but that there's this sense of consistency also that flows back and forth, and that we work together. And as much as what I've researched and what I understand and what my pet projects are and loves, I can't put that on Salt Lake without a greater level of understanding. I do have lots of experiences. I have lots of models of instruction that I've worked with, but I need to see what fits here. And at the end of the day, it might not fit everyone even here. We still have to consider that in order to be equitable, one size cannot fit all, that maybe we need to do certain things in certain schools and things differently. And so again, you cannot do that without knowing. So please be prepared that there'll be a lot of conversation going on. That is my leadership style, is collaboration and feedback. And I'm a data girl at heart. And so to me, qualitative or quantitative, either way, I want to hear about it.
Thank you. All right, we've got about 10 minutes left. So these are some questions that were submitted through the Q&A portion of our webinar. So the first question is, your professional resume and education has been almost entirely in the Virginia area. Why leave your community and apply to work in the state of Utah, especially for the Salt Lake City School District? What do you bring to the table from working and studying in Virginia and DC that will aid Salt Lake City specifically and Utah in general?
Okay, very good. And that's a very good question. I'm actually glad to be asked that. First of all, your diversity, let me tell you, Salt Lake City, when the opportunity came up, so let me back it up a little bit. So I'm up in Page in a pandemic and no family around, empty nester and all of that. Kind of makes you reconsider where you're working, thinking the kids will come visit more often, not quite so much. So at the end of the day, you start thinking, okay, I'm going to explore other opportunities that either put me closer to some of the children in the Richmond area down that direction and our children that I have in Utah. So with that, I started exploring the opportunities that were there. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's Salt Lake. How wonderful. And oh my gosh, yes, Salt Lake is the most diverse city out there. I love that because, again, that's my background. So even though I was from Virginia, a lot of the equity and achievement issues and the graduation rates and closing the achievement gap, everyone experiences that in their own frame in whatever state they live in. We just have different tools and different resources, but it's all the same work. I will say that there are some differences as far as the state assessments are a little bit different, and the data mining, how to get hold of some data and how to interpret that data. And in calling someone, I did some homework and I called about the test here, and I called someone who works as an administrator in another school division to get a better understanding. Because I was like, wow, there's not this, and in Virginia we have this. So I was trying to make the correlation between the two. And so that's what you do when you go to another state. You use your framework that you know, and then you study the other one to make those connections, and you're able to transfer your knowledge over. I do think there are some things in Virginia that we do really well, but that is something I'd have to see, more in depth. And a lot of that's data. When I was looking at the data and your assessments and, peeling back the layers and looking at the scores, I guess I was a little surprised by the state scores and what seemed to me to be a little bit lower than what I'm used to in Virginia. But because in Virginia, we have a set benchmark that everyone has to meet or you're not accredited. So a little bit of difference when you guys have the report card and you have the different elements that go into the report card. And so again, you can transfer that knowledge of how you focus on the elements that get you accredited and get you appealing to the community and help you meet those parameters and expectations set out. But then you're able to transfer it to Salt Lake. So while I was looking at the data, yes, was I looking through the lens of Virginia? Yes, I was, which just elicited more questions. So those would be questions that I'd be asking people here to have a greater understanding, to respect the process here, but to possibly offer suggestions of ways that perhaps we could look at things differently or get new data sets or create new data sets to help us based on my experiences and my accessibility to data in Virginia. So again, I was looking and still looking at things in Virginia that, would allow me to have that diverse experience again and be close to children. And then Salt Lake had it too. And then when I saw what all you offered and that you had IB and AP, and then you have Avid, and we used something a little bit different back there, and just all the components, there's so much of the experiences that I've been through that I feel like would complement what Salt Lake is doing. And you guys really should be proud of yourselves of what you're doing. I was still in awe of all the different programs and offerings that you offer in your schools. And I just visited a CLC today. Oh my goodness, that's to be applauded. And I look at in Virginia how we were struggling to do that with community assistance teams and student assessment teams. And then you all here have this full-blown service here. It's just, again, to be applauded. But it doesn't mean that because I'm from another state that I can't also make that translate into Virginia. It's just framing it and having a deeper understanding of how it works here. And then applying some of the good things that Virginia does really well, perhaps would serve it well here, and perhaps not. And then there's really good things here that I might call my peeps back in Virginia and say, oh my gosh, you ought to see how they do this in Salt Lake. So education is all about sharing and collaboration. It doesn't matter where we're from, right? And so I look forward to still doing that and keeping some networks in Virginia to help us and make those connections, but then building networks here and learning things and sharing them back out again. That's what we do as educators.
All right, we've got time for about one more question. We've got 5 minutes left. So
Okay.
here's your final question. Our student population is diversifying more and more each year. We are no longer the majority white, majority middle class district that we once were, and we need to operate and be led as such. What changes, practices, and insight would you bring to Salt Lake City School District to transform us into a leading urban district in the nation?
Very good. See, I love that challenge because when I worked in majority minority schools, that's what I'm used to doing. And what it is, it's about taking that moment to understand the culture. As I said earlier today, diversity is not about recognizing our differences, it's about embracing our uniqueness. And so you have to have moments of celebration, you have to have moments of learning, you have to have moments of understanding and building that cultural proficiency. And it comes down to do equity audits. That can be painful at times, guys. I'm telling you, that's really a painful process. But to really look at where are we putting our money, what resources, are there certain groups that don't have as strong of a voice because culturally they don't have a strong voice. And so how do you help empower them to have that voice in a new setting where they're learning the English language and the new processes of this country, and to make them also, because different communities have a different level of respect or interaction with school divisions and school and education as a whole. So it's about building those bridges and celebrating the uniqueness that each of us bring to it and bringing it in and embedding it. And so when you start doing the equity analysis, you really have to look at, do our policies reflect true equity? Because your vision is equity and excellence, right? Every school, every classroom, every day. But you can't have one without the other. And sometimes inadvertently, we strive for excellence, but we're not hitting the equity part. So if it's truly about equity, then all our children should have equal access and opportunities, and all our children should be achieving. And so perhaps then you start looking at financially, where are we putting our resources? I was sharing with the school administrators this morning, you know, when you start peeling back the layers, are we really putting more funding towards certain classes? And this is going to be a hardship for teachers. I'm just telling you now, guys, that, you know, that's our pet project. That's our little baby. That's that one course we love to teach. But how much money is going to that? And are we not putting more towards more of the gatekeeper classes like the Algebra 1, the freshman English course? What resources they have, and when you have more students taking that and aren't being successful, as opposed to maybe your high flying students in some of these elite elective classes. I'm not saying there's not a place for them. I'm just saying if we're really about equity and excellence, there's just some of the hard conversations and things you have to look at. And so if Salt Lake is really about equity and excellence, we have to do those audits. We have to do asset mapping. We have to look at what do we have in-house, the skill sets, what do we have in the community that can help grow us and teach us and learn us? How can we make it a part of our lessons? How can we make our curriculum be more equitable about the direction that we take, you know, like history, and looking at through the lens of the different communities that we have represented our building, and being intentional about that, not just haphazardly, you know, like in February, do what we do in February, but make it about that it's woven in throughout, that we're studying, you know, the Black history, that we're studying the Hispanic history, and that we're empowering the children that they have role models and people to look up to, and that these people can be from any community, that you can aspire to be a Martin Luther King. It doesn't matter who you are, what race you are, but to understand the contributions that other people have made to our melting pot that we call America, and everybody embracing that. But you have to do the audits, you have to peel back the layers, and we have to have courageous conversations and make some tough decisions at the end of the day if we're truly about equity and excellence. But I think Salt Lake City is primed for it with your community, your location, and just all the things you already have in place, but it's going to take the next couple of steps to take us to the next step forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know there was 1 or 2 questions that we did not get to, so I do apologize. For those that submitted a question, did not have them answered, I invite you to join the community forum this evening. We'll do our best to get through as many questions as we can. But Dr. Gonzalez, thank you for your time. Thank you to the participants, and thank you to those that I can't see or on the table. But thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. And thank you to you too. Thank you for being, it really helped to have faces